Crypto can be a gamble. We all know that. It can be a complete roller coaster at times. If you're up, why not throw some profits on mybookie.ag and use your extra cryptocurrency in their casino? With live dealers, it's exactly like being in Vegas, but without all the smoke and noise. From blackjack, roulette, baccarat, slots, sports betting, props on entertainment and politics, all the way to esports like League of Legends and Counter-Strike. Not to mention, you can play all of their games on your cell phone, iPad, or tablet computer. It's entirely up to you. You can literally play from anywhere. It's like being in Las Vegas on your couch. MyBookie.ag also offers deposits on their website with Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin. And payouts are incredibly fast and totally anonymous with cryptocurrencies. Check them out at mybookie.ag and be sure to use the promo code CryptoStreet for a 50% bonus when you deposit.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event.
Let's go.
Round one, fight.
Thank you for tuning in to the Crypto Street Podcast. Here are your hosts, Killer Whale, Prince, and Crypto Dale.
And remember to tip your waitress.
Welcome, everybody. Another episode of Crypto Street Podcast. This is your host, Killer, along with my buddy, as always, Prince. Prince, how you doing, bro?
Hey. Not too shabby. It's been a good day, good evening, so I can't complain.
Watching that hockey game, right?
Yeah, like great timing with this podcast. I got to miss the third period of this game. Like, come on. But, c'est la vie. But yeah, wicked game.
When's the next game of the series? Saturday, Sunday?
Well, if there is a next game.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, if Vegas loses, it's done, right? Washington's got the cup, so.
For sure.
It's tight.
Cool, dude. Our guest today is somebody people have been requesting for quite some time. I think people will really be looking forward to this episode once they see that he's been on. Everybody, welcome Collin Crypto. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no problem. We've had a ton of people ask for you. So I'm happy we finally, settled on a time that works for everybody and we can get you on the show. So the way we like to start pretty much every episode is just asking how you got into crypto, what brought you to this point. Kind of walk us through your journey up to here.
Yeah, sure. So I originally heard about Bitcoin in general around 2011, I believe it was. And it was not in a positive light. So it was a dig.com front page article. So that was a website that was bigger than Reddit. Most people know Reddit nowadays, but back then Dig was much larger. And this hit the front page on this and Slashdot and some other, nerdy popular websites. And it was talking about a guy who had accumulated a lot of like $1 to $20 Bitcoin. And then he got hacked and he had, obscene amounts. So he lost, $500,000 or something like that. So that's where I originally heard from it, looked into it and I was like, well, it doesn't sound very safe, yada, yada. I didn't get it, just kind of put it on the back burner and forgot about it. So fast forward until the end of 2012, early 2013 is when I started looking at it again, like legitimately. And I've been doing a lot of computer gaming around that time. So I had a very nice graphic card, playing Skyrim on ultra settings, yada, yada. So I went from that to mining overnight in my free time. And I was mining Litecoin because at that point, GPUs were kind of being pushed out, obviously, for too much difficulty. But you could mine Litecoin. And I was making, just a few bucks a day or whatever, nothing to brag home about. And I ran that for quite a few months until I think there was a point where I was making about, $2 profit a day, just running 24/7 when I wasn't on my computer. And at that point, I'm like, there's this just not worth the, loudness, the fans running, the tear on the, all the equipment in the computer. And so I paused. And Litecoin, I believe, was around $1 or $2 back then. And so I had stopped mining just because I was comparing it to the current value, not, factoring in any potential future value. But obviously, I was flipping the Litecoin into Bitcoin, and obviously, Litecoin exploded, and Bitcoin exploded kind of around that time where Max Kaiser had tweeted that Litecoin was going to $50. So I moved back because every day I was moving Litecoin into Bitcoin, just kind of, I preferred Bitcoin. But when Max Kaiser tweeted that, I kind of shifted all in, kind of, terrible risk management and moved all into Litecoin. And then it eventually did hit pretty close to $50. I think it wicked to like 45 or 47 or something. But of course, I was a noob back then, so I kind of just held it. I was like, oh man, I'm getting rich, making a bunch of money on this. It went all the way up to whatever it was, 47, let's say. And of course, then there's the big crash when people realize, oh, there's a bit of irrational exuberance going on. So then, it crashed back to say 25, 30. I don't remember exactly, but that's when I started, flipping back into the safe haven that Bitcoin was back then. So that's kind of how I got originally involved. And then as a hobby, I kind of started just day trading. Mostly there was not too many altcoins back then. So it was a lot more research based. It would be, sifting through the muck that is Bitcoin Talk forums and just looking for new launches and stuff that was coming out. And a lot of them, it was big, a lot of scams, a lot of pump and dumps. It was a completely different market than, more mature one we see now. And so I was just trading as a hobby for most of 2013. Then we had the first big bubble up to 1175 at the end of 2013. And that's when most of the people that you see on kind of Twitter kind of got in around that time. If you guess, you've had like Zacharias and Bitcoin Dad and Not So Fast, I believe, was also around that time. And that's when, the industry started growing. A lot more people started spawning altcoins. And that kind of was like a Cambrian explosion of just, there's not 20 to pick from anymore. There's, 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously, now we're up to, the thousands. But back then, that was a big deal. And bubbles are where a lot of people hear about crypto. So the industry just grew that way too. So then I was trading as a hobby, and then I had been doing that in 2014. I ran through the whole bubble, kind of learned how to trade in the bear market after the 2013 crash. And then I switched full time in December of 2014. So I went to college for, marketing, advertising background. I had been doing search engine optimization, data analytics, that kind of sort, for about, 5 to 10 years, for about 10 years prior to that. And then I just moved over full time because the hobby started paying more and it was a lot more fun, even though there wasn't any job security. So then I've been doing trading full time since December 2014.
So did you have like a real job in between, like at any of those points, like even if it was an internship or something? Or
yeah, when I graduated college, I was working for a few different Fortune 500s. Medtronic was the big one, so they had me doing their SEO and their advertising. It was a big medical device company. They invented the pacemaker or whatnot. So
yeah. So how long did you do that for?
1 year, right around.
Okay.
So I had been having a bunch of SEO and advertising clients on and off for about a decade, since I kind of self-taught myself SEO way back when. And the Fortune 500s weren't more than 2 years, and that was just a lot of consulting work. I guess real job, quote unquote, is hard to qualify, I guess.
Yeah. So we asked this to our last guest, Birch, like what it was like going from that corporate life into full-time crypto. What was that experience like for you?
It was unique just because, for one, I had known a lot of these people online, but I hadn't actually met any of them because all back then we were using the forums. We were using IRC. Coin Markets was a big channel back in 2014. And so all these people, you talk to them on a daily basis, but you don't ever meet them face to face. So it's kind of weird adjusting from meeting people in person to just dealing with people with an anonymous name online, their alias or whatever. So I guess there's that weird bit of adjustment factor for that. So I made sure right away that, I would take weekends off just so I'm not like just stuck to the computer all day long, because crypto moves so quickly that there's always news coming out and it's 24/7 markets, and
you lose track of the days, and it's like
a long time ago.
It's already Friday.
Exactly. I put my foot down. I'm like, I take weekends off, and I've been doing that for years, and that still hasn't adjusted. Like, hey, there's big news. Where's Colin? Oh, it's Saturday. He's not around. Okay.
I like that. I respect that a lot, because I have tried that. Like, I try to do it, but I just haven't. I don't know. I haven't got to a level yet where it's like I can just step away completely. It's like I'll think I am, but then it's like next thing you know, I'm going on my phone and I'm going through crypto Twitter again, and I'm looking at price action, and it's like,
for sure. I cheat too. I look at my phone, but yeah, I try to stay away from the weekends. We'll just put it at that.
Well, it's so hard because like the 24/7 nature of the markets is such a unique factor to it. It's like it's just so weird. I mean, the ability to get addicted to it is gigantic. Like I remember the exact same thing when I first started. I could not look away from the charts for like. This was probably like the first day where I found out about it, like on a Friday, luckily. And I was just up like some kind of like crazy crackhead, like no sleep at all, just like looking at charts. Like I was like, there's too much money to be made.
4 in the morning.
I'll sleep when I'm rich. It's like, it's ridiculous.
Watching the 1 minute chart on some shit coin.
Yeah, on Poloniex.
Oh, absolutely. And back when I started, the exchanges were even worse than then.
So, Colin, what do you think of the markets today? Like, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin? If you have, I know price predictions are like super tough, but if you have any thoughts on where we're going from here.
I think the retrace was healthy. We had a lot of rational exuberance with the big bubble. the bubble is how people, like I just mentioned earlier, how people kind of get into the market for the first time. So you'll go to a coffee shop and hear people talking about Bitcoin, where that doesn't happen when you're in a year-long bear trend. So from a growth perspective, I think this is really healthy. I kind of like that we had the strong blow off top, crash from 20,000. Now we're trying to form a higher low, just in the last couple months here, but it's still too early to say. But I think we're going to have another sideways market for quite some time. And that's actually for a long-term trader, that's, kind of boring because we trade volatility. So it is what it is, but overall healthy.
Now, not only are you kind of just a trader and all that within crypto, but you also, you've kind of created your own stuff behind it. You have, you're the founder and the creator of GamGambit. Now, why don't you go into a little bit about what is GamGambit for people who might not have an idea what it is? I've traded Gam before. I remember on BitRate.
Yeah, me too.
So it's good having you on.
Yeah, for sure. So the group started in early 2015, a few years ago, and it started as just a private group where we would have day traders kind of trade. We would have a pool of funds that we gave away to a bunch of different Forex accounts and crypto trading accounts. And then since everyone on Twitter always brags about how awesome their trades are, but they never tweet their big losing trades or how much, how calculated their risk management is, this was kind of like a spreadsheet competition for who was the best trader and, how much money they were actually making, proportionate to the funds they were given. So the experiment, you could call it a success, you could call it a failure. It basically showed that everyone that was given money got their ass kicked in the market. And it's a little bit on me because obviously people are going to be a lot more risky with other people's money. Just that's the nature of the beast. So I guess I could have set it up better, but the experiment kind of just showed that people on Twitter get their ass kicked a lot more than they show that they do.
That's a wicked little experiment to have. And I think, even right now, I guess this doesn't seem to be anything new of, the egos on crypto Twitter telling everybody how great they are at trading. But, it's like, geez, I hear this and it's like, we need this again. We need to get a competition, something to track this for, some of the individuals who like to run their mouths. I think it'd be good.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's very interesting to me that you said that people were riskier with other people's money, because for myself, I would feel like I'd be way more conservative with other people's money. Like with my own stuff, I'm ridiculously risky. If you look at if I went to a financial advisor and was like, here's what I have and here's how much is in crypto, you'd be like, are you out of your fucking mind? Are you crazy?
Sure.
And so
I guess I should have clarified that a little bit better. So one of the incentives that we had for the project was any profits you made, you could keep 20% of them. So if someone's being very scarce with or very protective and they're managing their downside risk and everything, they're using 1 to 3% of their profile or their portfolio size. But at the same time, if someone bets the whole amount that was given to them, if they make money on that trade, their 20% that they actually earn is going to be much higher. So by my poor setup, it kind of incentivized gambling. So it was just a weird structuring thing. But that was how GamGambit originally started. We've pivoted many times since then.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys, there's a lot to it now. It's not just that. I didn't even know about that part of it, actually. So that's fascinating.
Yeah. And then more recently and long term, it's a private trading group that's split into 2 sections. So we have a membership fee that's paid in the token itself. And that keeps out, it adds a barrier to entry. So it keeps out the trolls, the shills, the scammers and everything, because they're not going to want to risk getting banned and then have to keep paying the entry fee.
Yeah.
So it adds, that kind of quality barrier to entry. And then the group itself is split into 2 tiers. So there's one for the day trading where people post, altcoin news, new coins that are coming out, stuff to mine. People can get help with masternodes, stuff like that. And there's also the technical analysis. So we have a bunch of people that post charts and debate that kind of stuff in a private setting rather than publicly to 60,000 people on Twitter. And then the other portion of the group is the ICO syndicate. So we work with a lot of ICOs, pre-sales, token generation events, equity investments, you name it, everything in the crypto space. And we pool the funds together. I escrow it for free. I'm the number one escrow on bitrated.com. So people can kind of trust me. I've escrowed 8-9 figures and I'm not going to run away with your 5 Ethereum kind of thing. So I escrow everything. And then we basically, long story short, we pool funds and then we can reach out to the crowd sale and say, okay, you're offering 20% for your earliest stage pre-sale. Well, if we give you $1 million, can we get, 30%? And obviously every ICO is different, and those are just very simple terms. But, we have a lot more leverage in the negotiating room, because the ICOs also get the benefit of getting that lump sum up front. They get the benefit of a large group, so that distribution is much better than if just an institution, a single hedge fund invested in them. And they can have the funds ready for development and marketing right away, rather than being forced to hold them for 90 days or whatever the ICO specifications are. So those are the two portions, depending on what people need in the group. Each one, has its own membership fees for the cost, or you can get in both if you're interested in that, and it's a discounted rate.
And then as well, you also got the, the technical, the indicators too.
Right.
Because, TradingView, you guys got the indicators, and, I've never used them myself, but, I've definitely seen guys posting charts, and they'll have them, on their charts, and it looks good. So you go into that a bit too.
Yeah. So TradingView offers a nice platform for charting everything. And we have proprietary indicators that kind of simplify it and speed people up. So if you're new to charting or experienced, you can kind of find what works for you and get value out of it. So in short, the trading indicators kind of give you a contextualized showcase of where price is. So each candle will be colored something different depending on the previous price action, and kind of give you an estimation of what the future candles are going to look like. So you can see how strong the uptrend is, how strong the downtrend is, where pivots are. You can also turn on popular indicators like the Ichimoku cloud, two different EMAs, Bollinger Bands, RSI, divergences, and a whole lot more. And it just only takes up one spot on your TradingView account. So if you have a free TradingView account, which 90% of people do, they cap you out at 2 or 3 indicators. So this one is allowing you to get 15 of the most popular indicators plus proprietary ones for one little of your 3 spots. And so those are a one-time fee, also accepted exclusively in the Gambit token. So it's 5 GAM for access to those, which is like $40 for lifetime access at the current prices.
What are some of your favorite indicators, just for like things that you use personally to trade, or things that you find most important when you're looking for a trend or a coin?
Yeah, that's kind of how I designed the trading suite. So the different support and resistance levels, the candle colors for trend, bearish pivots, Stochastic RSI divergences, Ichimoku cloud, EMA lines, Bollinger Bands, pivot points. That's kind of the general there.
So all of the above, like a lot
Pretty
of them,
much,
like
yeah.
very... Okay.
And the nice thing about the trading suites on TradingView is you can just change checkboxes depending on what you want. So you can quickly go from a chart looking at one thing and going, okay, now let's check out where we're at in Bollinger or Ichimoku cloud, or et cetera, and kind of flip back and forth.
So would you say like your trading, if you're looking for an entry, is a combination of all those things probably, right? Where it sort of forms this mosaic or this completed jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah, definitely. I personally put a lot of weight into the Ichimoku cloud. I don't trade it exactly how the textbook Ichimoku trading system is. I use it more as proper support and resistances, but with like any trading plan, you have to find what works for you, what's consistent, and what's profitable. So it's kind of adapted over the years into how I trade specifically.
How has it changed over time, your trading style, if at all?
Just experimentation. So when I first started, I would read a PDF of some trading plan. So to use Ichimoku cloud as an example, it was made for the Japanese Forex market, which is open 28 days a month. So that's very optimized, but crypto obviously being 24/7, 365, those numbers didn't always make sense. Sure, they work for some people, and a lot of people use them with the standard default settings. But I use the double cloud, which is different settings by default in the Gambit suite, which you can change. And that's just optimized for a market that doesn't close. And so when I originally started, I would use the default indicators and I would use them how everyone else was. But at the end of the day, a computer or AI is always going to be bot trading those better than a human can, in theory, or at least they will be when the market's mature enough. You could still argue crypto is pretty early, but if you have your own trading plan, obviously you potentially have the advantage of not a million people copying you, for better or worse. Obviously, there's pros and cons to that. So.
Do you do your own trading like yourself, or do you have a bot programmed?
I've experimented with bots, but I prefer manually trading.
Why in particular?
I've just noticed. One, I'm not a huge programmer. I wrote the logic for the scripts, but I have other people that write the Pine scripts. I'm not a programmer, so I don't like fidgeting with that kind of stuff. And I like the human touch of seeing one setup and comparing it to all the other setups, knowing, okay, this is a little bit better chance because of, XYZ reasons, that, there's more upside to this and less downside. So I'll put, a different bid adjustments. In theory, when the markets are mature enough, bots will push everyone out just like they did, at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange or whatever.
Yeah.
All the floor traders are like, no, we won't be replaced by computers. And, now it's just a showcase for the media. So I imagine that'll be for crypto markets eventually. Hopefully we're still far out though, since I trade manually.
Yeah, same here.
I think people are saying like we probably have another maybe year and a half ish before like it's completely overtaken by bots and algorithms. And I think, with all this BART action, I'm like pretty convinced that's some sort of like strategy that a lot of people are using with a bot, whether it be some sort of momentum strategy or some sort of scalping strategy. I mean, this is a hunch. I have no idea, but do you have any thoughts on that? Like the very like up and down, severe up or down action that the market's been experiencing so far?
Well, there's definitely lots of bots already involved. Even when Poloniex kind of started the big Ethereum run, that kind of pushed money into alts and all the institutional funds started showing up. You could load up a MACD indicator and see there's bots trading on that. So, yeah, very much so. Everyone's kind of been saying, oh, in a year from now, it'll all be bots. But people have been saying that for a few years now. It's hard to say exactly how much, but there's definitely lots involved now. And most of the market making is done by bots now.
Yeah, I think really it's just going to be the sophistication of them that we see ramping up more.
Right.
And more.
And with any hope, there's going to be better and better liquidity as we move forward and, more retail in the market. But we'll see how that kind of turns out.
Yeah, and that's something we've seen.
Yeah.
Well, like liquidity, it's really dried up quite a bit.
For sure.
In the past month.
Yeah.
I was looking at the chart zoomed out and I was like, man, like it doesn't look that great on the volume side. It's like, I don't mind the price action right now, but wouldn't mind some volume.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's also kind of interesting to see these strategies, whatever this BART thing might be. As a strategy gets more crowded and more people go to it, it becomes less effective because you have less of a sort of front-running effect on getting in early. There's more competition, there's more money that's spoiling your trends and all that sort of thing. So this BART thing is not going to last forever. Eventually that trade, whatever it is, will get too crowded and I think people will leave and do other stuff. So it's an interesting dynamic right now. I think it's like very apparent that something's going on with all this up and down stuff where it's like climbing a skyscraper and then falling off a cliff every single time.
Right.
It's kind of funny to watch though, because, people will freak out about it and it's like, oh, this BART strikes again, but really when you're on the low time frames, it looks pretty intense. But
definitely,
the classic zoom out, right? Once you zoom out, it's like, well, that's just intraday moves. It's, it's just another day.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's like made the trend lines choppier, but it's not necessarily like that much crazier overall.
Intraday moves, it's made it a lot choppier, yeah. But I think long time frame, it really hasn't changed a whole lot to me. At least it's.
Colin, do you have any are there any sectors you favor over others for 2018 or just going forward, whether it be privacy coins, just what are your thoughts on that?
I think in the next, say, 12 to 18 months, we're going to see a lot of people move into security tokens. So we'll see security token exchanges, and those will be fully regulated, basically like stocks and equities now.
And we're already kind of seeing the steps taken now to kind of go forward with that, right? With the Coinbase news this week, it looks like they're trying to move into that
Exactly,
direction.
Yeah. They just acquired a company for their broker-dealer license. And the broker-dealer, for people that don't know, allows you to sell securities to accredited investors. So they're kind of moving towards the regulated market already. I think we're going to see a lot of full-blown security exclusive exchanges launch in the next 6 months. I know there's a few hyped up kind of ones that are backed by tokens. Polymath has been working with security tokens. There's Harbor. There's a few launching or launched recently. And I think a lot of the industry is going to move that way, especially when we've seen the SEC kind of only put their foot down on very obvious security tokens. There hasn't been much leeway. They're kind of just doing the scare tactic where we don't want to set a precedent and say all ICOs are securities, which, James Clayton, the SEC guy, has kind of said in interviews, but they haven't come out and, attacked or fined a lot of these people. So there's still the argument of, is there a difference between a security token and a utility token, and where is the line? The SEC is just doing the scare tactic of scare everyone and then kind of let them take all the risk before giving them proper guidance.
We've heard a lot of people say that in regards to security tokens. Like a lot of people are really getting on that train, it feels like.
I think regardless of what happens with utility tokens, and we're talking long term, so let's fast forward 2 years, which I suppose is very long term in crypto, not long term in reality. But in 2 years, whatever happens to utility tokens won't matter. There will be security tokens, in my opinion, just because it's a great way to distribute equity to individuals. They can do a lot of the same things stocks can. So once they figure out just how to properly set up the restrictions involved with securities, I think it'll be a very large industry, and a lot of different companies will think about tokenizing just to kind of distribute equity.
Yeah, I agree. One of the big stories this past week has been the launch of, I've never really said this out loud, but EOS or EOS. I don't know what most people say, but I guess EOS sounds kind of cool, so we'll go with that. But do you have any thoughts on that, Colin?
I think it's got an insane valuation, but that by itself doesn't really mean anything. It's got a huge market cap, way overvalued, but there's so much rational exuberance in the markets that maybe that doesn't matter. It's got an awesome uptrend, and the charts look good. So I guess it depends on what frame you're asking it in.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough for me because, I know a little bit about it, but there's so much polarization, I feel like, surrounding EOS, where people are either like, oh, this is some stupid scam, they don't have a project, it's run by a bunch of criminals, or they raise way too much money. But on the other hand, it's I'm thinking all that money is kind of a good thing, and that's kind of been one of my arguments for Tezos, is over the past, is they've raised so much money, they'd have to do a colossally bad job to mess it up and not be at least somewhat successful. And so I kind of get that feeling with EOS as well. And there's something you mentioned earlier too about, pumps being good in a way because they attract attention and capital. And that's true of individual projects as well, obviously, where if a project pumps, it usually holds a lot of its own coin, so it has more capital to deal with, and it becomes this sort of feedback loop where success kind of builds upon itself.
For sure, yeah. And even after every large kind of Bitcoin pump, there's a big crash to follow. But I'm pretty sure in 90% of the scenarios in the previous bubbles, it has bottomed out much higher than the previous one. So a lot of new retail enter the markets, and a lot of new holders, and distribution goes up, and just more people know about Bitcoin and are willing to invest in it. So that's kind of universal in bubbles, unless there's a big scam or whatnot involved. But Bitcoin doesn't have that so far anyway.
It'll be interesting to see how the whole EOS crowd sale now, and the mainnet's coming on right away. And there's always that fear of there's a 120 million worth of Ethereum on the blockchain going to Bitfinex. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out more, I think, with the Ethereum price. And it's kind of it's a weird situation to me because you have direct competitors, and now EOS is going to be able to, if they want, really, they could just trash the price.
And it's weird to think about that the market cap currently is $13 billion for EOS, and they're just launching, and Bitcoin is 130. So is it really worth 10%? No, but markets are irrational, and there's more factors involved. So who's to say it won't go up to 20 billion before crashing or anything like that? So
yeah,
very interesting.
So I don't have any EOS, but I've kind of been entangled in Tezos, I should call it, I guess. So I'm hoping EOS does well because they're compared relative to each other. So if EOS goes to a $40 million market cap or something ridiculous, there's an argument to be made for Tezos being 15 or 20, So I'm selfishly, I want it to do well, even though I don't have it.
For sure. And another thing similar to that factor is for Filecoin and for Tezos, a lot of money went into those very early, but it was before the big funds kind of showed up and started, making basket indexes and buying all the coins, because the bubble kind of happened after their raises, or, they were in the middle of it. So a lot of them new money showed up after those. And, the theory from the bulls would be, they might want to get in and they missed their chance. But, it's hard to say.
I like that.
What's the deal with Filecoin now? This is the one where it was around the same time as the Tezos sale, if I'm not mistaken, but it completely flew over my head. I did not participate, and I really know next to nothing about it. But I know it's fairly hyped by those who actually know what it is, and they're really hot on it.
Yeah, it was. I would look like an idiot if I tried explaining it over a podcast that's recorded permanently. But
yeah, don't worry about that. Yeah,
but yeah, it was very early. It was one of the first ones that had a heavy scrutiny for who could invest in it. They ran on CoinList, and they required being an accredited investor, and they kind of did it the quote unquote proper way before there was other coins to kind of look back on and say, maybe we should have done that. Because what we see a lot is token sales. A year ago, they would do whatever they wanted when they ran an ICO. They could accept people from the US, not really care where they're from. Now a lot of people are banning the US and China or requiring, them to be accredited investors just to reduce their risk from the SEC and other government bodies. Back then, Filecoin kind of had large lawyer teams and arguably did it the proper way, or more proper than most of them back in the day, where they had those requirements for individual investors, and they still did crazy well. They raised just over $200 million or whatever. So even that barrier to entry back then didn't slow them down.
Well, I just think it's funny, we always hear people complain about Tezos and not having their tokens, but, Filecoin was back then, it was around the same time, and I don't think they're launched yet either. But we don't really hear people out complaining, where's my tokens, where's my coins? It's a scam. They're not saying
what's weird?
So funny how things go.
I don't know too much about Filecoin, but I know it got a lot of hype when it was going on, and I feel like I've heard nothing about it since.
It's been kind of under the radar since, compared to Tezos, where everybody's just like, where's my money?
Tezos also had the problem of a lot of legal issues, and those are very public and obviously great to FUD. So people, if they tweet out FUD, it spreads a lot more than tweeting out, neutral or good news. So I think Filecoin is hopefully just working in the background, but until they launch, who knows? Yeah, they have been pretty quiet compared to the Tezos hype.
It'll be interesting. I've thought about this a lot, and I just, it's kind of, how we see this market continuing forward, when we talk about the security tokens. And, obviously, to me, a legit security token, you're never going to see it on an exchange, say, like Binance, just because of regulatory things. And so I think, so with Filecoin, this is another thing, right? It was done very properly, right? And like you said, kind of at the time, nobody was really treating a token raise like they did. And so it'll be interesting to see where they actually end up getting listed. And now seeing what Coinbase is doing and getting prepped for, I kind of, it's like, okay, well, Filecoin will probably be, one of those crew, the members going to the Coinbase once they get that whole dealio set up. So
yeah. Colin, I got a question for you. We got asked this during a recent live stream. I thought it was a really interesting question. I think the question was, if you could hold 1 million of Bitcoin or 2 million of any altcoin, I think was the time frame like 2 years, Prince, or a year or something?
I think it was a year, but I would rather put it to like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so let's say like you can hold either 1 million of Bitcoin or 2 million of any altcoin of your choosing for 2 or 3 years. What do you think you would choose of those options?
Probably Bitcoin. It's got the longest history. The price has been stable, obviously on an uptrend on that kind of time frame, very high uptrend. And nothing, if you even double the amount, and your example was 2 million for any other altcoin, there's nothing at $4,000 range that has as much history. So it's obvious Bitcoin for me.
Do you find yourself becoming more of a Bitcoin maximalist over time?
No, the opposite. So since I got in, 2012, 2013, I've always just kept the collateral in Bitcoin. Any trade profit that was made, flip it to Bitcoin. And that has been, kind of the mantra or whatever. And it wasn't until Ethereum that I realized just how much I was using it. Because when the ICO bubble started, most of them were just accepting Ethereum exclusively. And so I was actually using Ethereum more as a payments platform than Bitcoin. My Bitcoin was just sitting, in different hardware wallets and not really doing much compared to how much I was using Ethereum. So I was like, okay, maybe this isn't just, another shit coin. So now I kind of compared those two, and then everything else is nowhere near. Whether that's to say, either of those are going to be, the future of payments, who knows? But for now, I kind of see it as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then everything else.
I always talk about this, but when I first got involved, which was not that long ago, it was probably 2016. I cannot tell you how many people were just like adamantly saying Ethereum's a shit coin, it serves no purpose at all. I say this a lot, so some listeners are probably like, shut up, like you always say this. But it's like, it boggles my mind. Everyone thought it was like a scam. I'm like, this is clearly not a scam. Like there's so much activity around it. Like
I remember going on Reddit, I believe, and I was looking for info on how to like kind of set up my miners and all that for mining Ethereum. And this is when I was first getting in, and right away I'm just getting shit on by people. Why the hell would you mine Ethereum, you idiot? It's just garbage. It's just, all right, well, I won't ask anyone else anymore. Sorry, guys.
I missed out on the Ethereum ICO because I was reading the terms and whatnot. And this was obviously before a lot of token sales were happening, or ICOs in general. And in the terms, if I recall correctly, it said something like, we promise this company might never actually come to fruition. Your tokens are worth nothing. You promise you're donating and we'll never see, anything in return for your donation. It just sounded really scary, but obviously they were just covering their ass from a legal perspective. Hopefully, obviously there's issues now, but And so I was like, you know what, that sounds like I'm just, throwing money into a fire. So I'm going to pass on that. And obviously hindsight's 2020, but it was, oops.
But most people are going to look at those terms. Most people are going to look at those terms and just freaking like, they're going to do exactly what you did, and they're going to say, no way, I have no protection here. There's nothing.
And it's funny now because there's ICOs now that are kind of doing the same thing, saying, you own no equity, obviously. You won't get anything in return for your donation. And then people are like, oh, it sounds like a scam. Let's throw a bunch of money at it because it worked last time. So now it's actually incentivizing people to make, poor investments.
It was a real hard kind of mental barrier for me, I guess, dealing with that exactly like what you just mentioned with, you look at the terms and the conditions and all this, and it pretty much tells you, you aren't guaranteed anything. It is a donation, right? And it took me a while to mentally get over that because it's like, where's my safety? I have nothing here. I'm looking at these terms and it's like, I am just throwing money down the drain to you guys and I might never get a thing for it, But then I guess if you want to actually do anything and get the ICO game, I guess, in the space, you kind of just put up with it after a while. But that was a hard thing for me to get over mentally.
For sure. One thing that I'm interested to see is we haven't had a precedent for it yet, but what happens when a company runs an ICO and then either gets acquired, because obviously the token holders own no rights. So, someone could acquire the company and say, we don't want this token and screw all the holders. They have no voting rights. They have no shares or anything. Do they have any kind of repercussion there? Or in the same thing, if a company goes bankrupt, token holders are obviously screwed that side of things. But, the precedent of, okay, what if, they pivot and say, we don't need the token anymore, but we ran a, $30 million crowd sale. Well, those are all donations. Sorry, guys. So we'll see if that, comes up in the next year.
I had never thought of that.
I feel like it will.
It's very frightening with a few different
I didn't think about
in.
that either.
Everyone's like, oh, if our company gets acquired, our token's going to be worth a fortune. Well, not necessarily,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's going to be an interesting situation because there's going to be some of these these companies, with tokens that will have significant interest from, larger companies, the stuff going on in the space. There's no doubt that this kind of stuff will happen. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with the tokens.
I guess that sort of goes to show how important it is to making your token integral in what your project does. Because so many like projects I think are like looking for a reason to have a token just because you can make so much money raising money for a token. But you really need to have like an actual use to kind of guard against that sort of thing and maintain the whole decentralized, utopia thing.
I think like people are starting to realize that a little more and more too. A few months back, it was like anyone and their dog, if they had a company, it was like, oh, well, let's get a token for it just cause. And I think, it's not like crazy yet, but it's slowly happening where people might be realizing it's like, okay, well, you don't need to tokenize everything that you're doing. Like some of it is literally just a waste of time, and it's pointless, right? There's quite a few tokens out there that to me, it's like, there's absolutely zero reason for this, but they felt like it was a good idea at the time. So how will that play out? Say, with a larger company and they might be looking to buy out a blockchain company and they have tokens. How will the larger company look at the token, right? Because not everyone looks at it like, yeah, this is a great idea. There's a lot that look at it like, I don't know.
Exactly. And like you mentioned, it depends on how integral the token is into whatever's company's, environments. I get pitched, 20 ICOs a week or whatever. And the first question I ask is, to myself is a token needed, or is it just, are they using it for the hype and, for the dumb money to kind of flood in because there's just so much money pouring into every ICO lately. So it's like, did you just create a token and say, we need this token to run one thing because, it's easy money and a reason to raise $30 million. And because a lot of these firms are raising, Series B, Series C level funding, and they have two guys in a white paper, and the white paper has typos in it. It's like, well, if you did that in, Silicon Valley, you get laughed out by every firm. So, but they run it on a token and boom, someone's investing. It's kind of sad, but that's just the market right now.
It is. It's ridiculous, right? You got plagiarized white papers, you got spelling errors. And, that was another thing that I remember there was an ICO, I think, oh God, I can't remember the one. It was a while back though. It was like before the real boom started to kick in. I remember reading the white paper and it was like, I'm looking at spelling errors. I'm just, it was just real sloppy. But yet the guys behind it, they were smart guys. And it was ARK. I believe it was ARK, that blockchain. And now Yeah, I remember at the time, and I ended up putting money into it, but it was just like, God, this feels so weird. Like I don't like this, but at the same time, you knew it was like, well, the market doesn't really care about that at the same time. It's like, okay.
Another kind of sad example is, I won't mention the name in case anyone was an investor and it's still, feeling the burn from it. But there was an ICO that basically, it was a pure fraud, and the guy made up a bunch of fake LinkedIn accounts for different staff members, and the SEC just crushed him, obviously. But the fact that they raised, N million dollars, whatever they did, is just like, do people do any research, or do they go, that's a neat idea? Yeah, that makes sense to me. Here's some money, kind of thing. So it's just like sad a little bit.
Well, I think the whole like typo thing also is kind of speaks to the notion that just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at everything else as well. Just because you're a really good doctor doesn't mean you're a phenomenal statistician or investor or something.
That was the thing that I had to kind of take into account. Was it's like, okay, these guys who are writing this, they're not, individuals who want to
they're
deal
not creative
with
writers,
press releases or exactly right. They're not writers. These guys are developers, right? They're not working on writing white papers. That's not a concern to them. The grammar and the wording. It's let's develop something. And so that was something I had to kind of remember. It's like, okay, well, that's not what these guys really care about.
At the same time, though, I feel like that's kind of an important thing, though, because you have to have the wherewithal to realize, like, I'm not good at this. I shouldn't trust myself to do this. And I think if you don't have that, it's kind of a semi-bad sign about the team, And like, so I think it's important to have self-awareness and realize I'm crap at this. So let me hire somebody who's very detail-oriented, to write our white paper or edit it at least. So I feel like it kind of does mean something at the same time.
It's changed a bit to me now where, now I think there's a little bit more, you can expect more professionalism with some of these white papers. And obviously I think that just comes with the amount of money that's been being raised. Obviously guys are going to look at it and be like, okay, well, this is serious. We can raise $10 million here in the span of 2 weeks, potentially. Let's get this freaking white paper down properly. Back a while ago, a year and maybe more ago, that wasn't really, I don't think the entire thought process was, hey, we can make a ton of money. Let's take this seriously. It was more like, let's try this. This seems like a cool thing, do a crowd sale, and let's see where it goes. And that was pretty much it. It was very, community driven and all that. And, you didn't see the marketing kind of like you do now and all that stuff.
On a similar line of thinking, there was also the problem of, for the more legitimate businesses that are running a token sale, if they wanted to say raise $3 million in a seed round, and then they had plans to grow the company, and then $3 million was enough to hire salary or pay for salaries and everything required, but then they see everyone else raising $40 million and $50 million, and they're like, well, if we can, why wouldn't we? So then they raised their cap to 30 to 50 million. Last year they were all hitting those caps regardless of what they were. So it's like, is it really their fault for asking for more when there's just that much money involved? I can't really blame them for being greedy, but just kind of crazy.
Yeah, and and I guess that's exactly right. You can't blame them. Like, the opportunity was there; they saw the opportunity, and in the game where Silicon Valley, where getting those capital raises, it can be pretty tough for startup entrepreneurs. They see the opportunity to come to crypto, and it's like, okay, well, in their shoes, they're pretty much saying to themselves, I'm an idiot if I don't try it.
Thankfully, we finally got past the part of insanely high hard caps. I'm seeing a lot lower this year. Ever since January and the crash, people have been a lot more conservative with their Ethereum and whatnot. So we're kind of seeing better numbers come out. But yeah, it's still kind of crazy just what people are expecting for how much little work is done up front.
I was going to say, a funny example of like the whole, like, let's raise this much, let's raise that much. If we can raise 100 million, why not do that? Is take a look at the Tezos ICO documents and like some of the things they were projecting. They're like, if we raise 30 million, this is like our moonshot, or like 40 million, this is our Mars shot, where they're planning like to like establish the currency as the standard currency in some small country, and just like completely ridiculous ideas, which in hindsight just looks so absurd. And it's like, but when you're caught up in like the fervor or like the insanity of everything, you don't really think that much. Or I didn't. Maybe I'm stupid, but it's I mean, the amount of money you can make is just absolutely absurd in crypto, especially last year.
I had
talking about.
I had a buddy's. I was hanging out with a buddy last week and having dinner with his family, and his mom starts talking to me about crypto, and she's like, why the hell didn't you do an ICO? Like, year and a half ago, that was your perfect time. And I'm like, it's just, what the hell were you thinking? I was like, damn, I should have. Like, that was the time to do it. To me now isn't really the time to be doing it, because I don't feel like hiring a team of lawyers and all that stuff. But yeah, back then you could, there were guys starting up an ICO and they didn't need lawyers. They weren't worried about that. It was just, guys in their basement potentially, right?
I mean, you could just have any idea and, you could raise a couple $1 million with nothing. With a nice website and like a decent, like just kind of salesy white paper or pitch, you could raise a couple million.
Yeah, last year we were seeing people that, I quit my job, auto repair, and now I'm looking to disrupt the medical industry. You're like, well, that's quite a jump there, but okay. Here's $10 million.
Good luck. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And they'll get it too. That's the thing. Like, they were getting the money. It's like, okay.
I think the same thing all the time though, Prince. I'm like, you could come up with any idea and just like be set for life, and just be like, here we go. Here's my 20%, Like,
and and it really was the case to me, like a year and a half ago, and maybe not even a year and a half ago, like even just a year ago, like that was prime time ICO, like if you wanted to host one, that was when you do it. And it's harder now. It's tougher now, but they'll still raise good money, as long as they take the right steps. But yeah, it's not like it was.
One thing that'll be interesting to see is when these companies finally fail, because majority of businesses fail. That's normal. That's healthy. But these tokens from last year or even this year have raised so much capital that they have a ton of runway, so they can run for the next 2 years. They don't even have to develop anything. They can be fat and happy and kind of just sit there and issue a newsletter once every few months, and that's it. But once they start failing and we see a large kind of example of, wow, there was, $100 million invested in that project and now it's gone, I think the industry will kind of change quickly after that. But, who knows when that one will be, when these companies that raised money last year, if they have $80 million, they can obviously run for 3 years before we see any problems like that or any solvency issues.
That'll be an interesting time, because it is a lot of people, a lot of companies, groups, raising a lot of money, but they're not necessarily, like, they've never had that much money at their disposal, right? So it's just a completely new thing for them. How do they handle that? Well, we've seen cases already where you got companies showing, partying on their yachts that they just snagged with ICO money, right? And it's like, okay, well, that's probably not going to last very long. And then you're seeing the it's like kind of a panic when Ethereum was getting hit so hard, and all these ICOs, they were taking Ethereum and they just thought, if we hold this Ethereum and we just don't sell, well, we're just going to get richer and richer anyways, because the price is just going to keep going up. And then, the price doesn't keep going up forever. It's like, well, what do we do now? Our funds just got chopped in half pretty much because price just went down.
When we had the bubble, obviously a lot of new hedge funds kind of joined in and kind of went, this example made a bunch of money, and they were just a crypto only buy and hold firm. And then the bubble obviously gets them going, I can do that too. I can, go on Poloniex and buy everything, and I'm a genius in a bull market. Obviously those people that are buying, holding from, November-ish are probably like, oh boy, down 60% or whatever it is. Not that bad, but I would not want to be running, someone else's fund if you don't know what you're doing that late, in the bubble.
That really kind of, it blew me away, but then at the same time it didn't. But it was just like, the amount of funds you saw popping up, especially when we were in that, 16, 17, 18K zone. And it's like, okay, like I get it. You guys see the opportunity to make some money here, but do we want to slow down and think a little bit? Like, do you really think it's a good idea to be starting a fund when the market is in this situation? No, but we still saw it anyway.
I give them shit, but at the same time, a lot of these funds are the huge amounts of money coming into the industry, the dumb money that's just buying everything. So as a greedy kind of crypto trader myself, I laugh at them, but I'm also kind of thankful for them. Thanks for pumping all the bags and everything. So it's a double-edged sword there.
They help us out, so yeah.
It's funny, Colin, you mentioned something, how the incentive system for a lot of these ICOs that raise a shitload of money, where they can just put out a newsletter every couple of months and be like, we're doing this, we're doing that, And it's like, it just kind of, it was very, it reminded me of how important incentives are in investing, because markets change, fundamentals change, environments change, technology changes, but human nature stays pretty much the same. At least it changes very slowly. And so, if you give people all this money, like you're saying, they're not going to have a reason to actually launch the blockchain or make updates or make it relevant or market or do any of that stuff. And so that's something very important I think people have to keep an eye on when they're looking at ICOs or new projects or really anything. It's just look at how the people are rewarded, and that's how they're going to act in accordance to that.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of really cool projects coming out that use, blockchain as a good use case for their system. We've just only talked about the negative, but I am excited about some. But like you were saying, it's amazing just how far communicating with the public about your project goes. So you can see different examples, and some will, post stuff every week. And it's just that small little, tweet or newsletter on Medium or whatever, medium.com is just crazy good for investors. So there's no breach of confidence or scares or what are they doing?
Yeah.
It's not like it's a large barrier to entry. The fruit's hanging pretty low on that one. So just crazy.
Even if it's just a signal like, hey, we're still alive, we're still working on it. Don't worry, everybody. We know you don't know us, but we're still here. We're working on it. And it's hugely important.
Unfortunately, crypto moves so quick that people are impatient, and development work takes time. People don't always understand that. So if there's no news update, it doesn't have to be something mind blowing. You don't have to partner with Microsoft every week or anything like that, or announce anything crazy news side. But just to make sure the work is actually getting done. There's updates to GitHub and small things like that. But that all goes into just proper due diligence on the ICOs you're investing in. Unfortunately, some of the information you don't know until after the project launches, or if they do some crazy media stunt or anything, you can't really control that. But that's kind of just the industry we're in right now.
Yeah, 100%. All right, that about does it, everybody. Colin, do you have anything you want to add or anything you want to say to the audience where they can find you if they don't already? I'm sure a lot of them follow you, but anything else you want to put out there in the world?
Yeah, sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Collin Crypto. I have 2 L's in Colin, which confuses everyone. So COLLINCRYPTO. Otherwise, if you're interested in learning more about Gambit or our trading view indicators, go to gambitcrypto.com. Oh, one more thing. Sorry. If you need an escrow for free for any crypto transaction, you can go to bitrated.com and I'll be on there.
Awesome. Thank you again, man. It was great having you on.
Thank you.
Take care.
Sweet. Check them out, everybody. Thank you for listening as always. You'll probably listen to this on Monday or Tuesday of next week. So hope you all had a good weekend and a good week ahead. We will talk to you all later. Take care. Peace.